you maybe sold Rocket Lab 100 times in the past weeks. Is that right?
Well, collectively, it's funny because I was actually adding it all up. Collectively,
Yeah.
I have probably sold a little over, what, 35% of my Rocket Lab in the past month and a half. Every single time, but by the way, I think today it's going to have a new high, all-time high. So you could
Yes.
easily say that that should be a very regrettable set of sales. But the way I look at it is that the idea behind investing is to buy low, sell high. Like fundamentally, that's what I subscribe to. I want to buy things at a low price, and I want to sell them when I think that they're overvalued. Now, uh, Rocket Lab is trading at 110 times its revenue rate, current revenue rate, roughly speaking. And at that revenue rate, it's hard to argue that it's undervalued. So um, historically, when I was younger as an investor, I might think, okay, something is overvalued and sell everything. But as I have learned that the market has this sort of like bipolar mentality where it takes things
Yes.
down way further than it should, and it takes things up way further than it should. I've learned to buy slowly when things are on their way down and sell slowly when they're on their way up. So um, do I think Rocket Lab is overvalued? Yes. Do I think it's a fantastic company? Yes. Do I want to trim at 110 times revenues? Yes. Would I buy the company today if I didn't have any? I would still love the company just as much, but I probably would not be a buyer personally at this price. And despite having sold 35% of my holding a month and a half ago, Rocket Lab made up roughly 20% of my portfolio, and it still makes up 20% of my portfolio because it has just gone hyperbolic. It's gone up so much. And I think it's up like 50%, maybe more in the past month or so. So,
Yeah, it's been
uh,
insane.
yeah, it's absolutely amazing to see. The company continues to crush it, though. They had a great earnings report. They raised their guidance for the next quarter. Their Neutron is very exciting. They're starting to have build a backlog of Neutron launches, this is their reusable rocket that competes with Falcon 9. For those who might not know details about this company, um, so they're in fantastic shape to take advantage of the space economy as it continues to grow and explode over the next 10 years. But it just feels like a very high risk company, because if the price were to go down 50% tomorrow, but just for sake of argument, market crashes, adjustments, whatever happens, because again, market tends to be bipolar. You can't argue that even at 50% off of today's price, that the company is extremely cheap. Then it would be like 55 times revenues, which is still very high, right? So
Right.
that's the reason I've been trimming. Now, I noticed you have been trimming Rocket Lab as well. So curious
I
to
have
know
been trimming. And
your
I'm
thoughts.
just looking here because you said if the stock were to drop or like 50%, we would be back around where the stock was in April. So
That's right.
last
That's
month.
right.
So that's like,
But
it's very much a
more
possibility.
but more importantly than what it was at in April is, like, is it cheap on a fundamental basis if it were to drop 50%? And the answer is that it's still not cheap on a fundamentals basis if it were to drop 50%. So
Right.
um, love this company, love Peter Beck's execution. In fact, I'd love to get Peter Beck on the podcast as our guest. He would be amazing. So we'll put out a open invite to Peter as
Good
well.
idea.
Um, but uh, but yeah, and I love what this company is doing. Now I want to know why you've been trimming.
Well, so I just did one trim. So unlike you, where you trim after every like $5 increase when the stock's going up this much, it's a lot of sales. I was specifically waiting for a big milestone, which was a 30x return on my
Oh,
initial investment. And I only
that's
did a
awesome.
small trim. I only sold roughly 2%.
Well, a 3,000% increase means that 1.8% or whatever is
Yeah.
roughly more than 50% of your original investment you got back
Yes.
from that one sale that was less than 2% of your current hold.
Yes.
That's
But
pretty incredible.
between this and other sales that I've done, and we can click in here, pull up my other, actually, let's go to this chart. Yeah, you could see, should we do this? Yeah. So you could see how I've been selling over the last, let's call it 2 years. And between these sales, I've made multiples on my initial investment.
Right.
And Rocket Lab is still my largest stock position by far at roughly 20% of my portfolio.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize yours was also around 20% of your portfolio. Mine is also
Yeah.
now around 20%, despite having sold so much. But
Yeah, it's hard
um,
to keep it lower than 20% if it just keeps
it
going up
just keeps
like
going
this.
up. It's
So,
been an amazing ride. Huge
yeah,
props and thank you to Peter Beck for and the Rocket Lab team for like incredible execution. And of course, the retail community has just been a huge fan of this stock as well. So it's really nice to see it exploding.
absolutely. So let's compare this to another space company that reported recently, which is ASTS. And I just like to get the crowd or the internet to just go against you every once in a while.
Yeah,
Um,
that happens all the time, by the way, like almost daily.
yeah, but it's very easy to poke the bear. Um, pun intended. So,
Who's the bear, me or
yes,
the
you.
crowd? Oh,
No,
okay.
you are the bear in this case.
I feel like
Um,
the internet is the bear. Okay, but anyway,
but
go
well,
go ahead.
the internet I think is a little more bullish than you are on ASTS. Now their earnings this quarter was not very strong. Or at least the headline numbers. Arguably, that's fairly irrelevant because it's all about building out the satellite network and proving the technology, not so much what their revenue is going to be this quarter. It's about future quarters. I believe management is claiming that everything is still on track to launch. I forget the number of satellites they've been
45.
targeting. 45, yeah.
45 is
Um,
what they need to get yeah, service up and running.
yeah, so they're on track to do that. Now, even with all of that said, it seems like ASTS and Rocket Lab have uncorrelated or decorrelated from each other, where they are no longer moving together, and instead, Rocket Lab has gone up and ASTS has gone down. This is where I poke the bear. Why do you think that is?
Well, ASTS doesn't have a business yet, right? Fundamentally, they have a fantastic, phenomenal idea that has never been done before, and it's questionable as to whether or not they are the ones who can get it done. The idea, direct satellite to cell phone service is a phenomenal idea. Like that, who wouldn't want that, right? You could have cell service anywhere in the world, same cell service, and high bandwidth, and you could be in the middle of the ocean and still have cell service. Everyone and their mother would want that service
And
if
you
it
don't
was,
need new hardware for it.
and you don't, and with your existing phone, you don't need new hardware. I mean, the idea is phenomenal, right? Um, but like the idea has been around for some time, and the question is whether or not this company can pull it off. And this is where sort of like me and the ASTS, uh, they call themselves the space mob, uh, diverge in opinions. My view is that ASTS hasn't done anything for me to believe that they can pull this off at scale. We're talking about billions of potential cell phones
And
users being able to sign up for their service.
emphasis of at scale, because they've shown tests where they've shown off the technology of a satellite connecting to a phone without any
Right.
additional hardware and it working. So we know that piece works.
That's right. And to be clear, they've shown it off 2 or 3 different occasions using a single phone call that they have told us about at a time. So, for example, in their latest earnings call, they talked about how they achieved 98 megabits per second in the middle of the ocean. Phenomenal. Just one call, as far as we know. Like they didn't say we established, like 17 calls at the same time, or
Right.
1,700 or 17,000. That would be more impressive. But no, one freaking connection at 98 megabits per second. And this is what we're supposed to be excited about, or the STS community is excited about. But my view is that at scale, they will have a lot of challenges. I don't know if this is the company that's going to be able to pull it off. And literally nothing they have said in the timescales that they have said has come to fruition yet. Now, you could argue that about Tesla or Elon or Rocket Lab, Neutron's, Rocket Lab's Neutron is behind, and so on and so forth. So you could argue this about almost every great company that, like, yeah, products run behind schedule. That's fine. Um, that would be a valid argument, and they're running behind schedule, not a big deal. But they run behind schedule in what appears to be blind spots. Like, they should know. Like, I've been listening to their earnings calls now for over a year. Last July earnings call, they were saying, or June rather, earnings call, they were saying how they are going to have two satellites put into orbit starting from the following month, and they obviously missed that deadline, and then up to 6 per month by the end of the year. Now, so far they only have launched 2 of these satellites into orbit that they have wanted to. One of them got deorbited because they launched it on Blue Origin's rocket, and it didn't get it into the right altitude that it needs in order to stay in orbit. So that may have been the best thing that could happen to them, because they could deflect the blame on someone else. But even if these satellites get into orbit, which they need 45 of them according to themselves, to be able to provide mass scale for US and Europe, the, the technology still has not been tested at scale. So, I am very skeptical as to whether or not this company can pull things off. Now, the fact that they get compared to Rocket Lab, which is one of my largest holdings, obviously, is like, it upsets me. It's just like, why? these companies are not at all alike. So that's the reason why I talk about ASTS at all, is because it's sort of like on my radar. It comes up all the time in the same discussions as Rocket Lab, but I don't think it deserves to be.